Welcome to Listen in Love. Today, Arcelia and I are going to be talking about a little bit of rebranding that we've decided to do with Listen in Love. If you were listening to us before, you would be aware that our tagline was mental health made relatable. And our new tagline is what every young woman should know. And the reasoning for that is because we did a lot of talking about mental health and why that's such a big deal for the age group that we serve, which is young ladies ages 13 to 23. Touched on it a little bit, but we never really got to the root of it, and we were never really able to break into actual practical tips to help young people overcome mental health struggles. And we've decided to do this rebranding because we directly serve ages 13 to 23 young ladies. And we've been able to identify some root struggles and also some practical tips that have been successful in helping young ladies overcome anxiety and depression and just be prepared for the world from a biblical perspective. So we just wanted to make you guys aware of that. We also want to make you guys aware that we have now started a Substack called the Under His Wings Substack. And I'm personally very excited about that. Arcelia and I are both writers, and Arcelia is an excellent writer. And we're able to bring our talents to a new form and a new form of awareness about what Under His Wings Gulf Coast does, but more importantly, an awareness to that age group that we serve that's relatable and tangible and actually helpful for them. It's not just something that you scroll online and you listen for 10 seconds and then keep scrolling. It's something that can resonate with you and actually gives you ways to overcome and be resilient. So it's called Under His Wings. You can find us on Substack. A link is below. You'll see a lot of coordination between our Substack and our podcast. That is intentional. We want these to flow in and out of each other and balance each other and give you new perspectives from each topic. Today, we're going to start off with a Substack that should be going out this Sunday, but we decided to talk about the root issue of mental health. And the root issue that we've discovered is lack of self-worth or low self-worth among a generation of American girls. We have this statistic from the CDC that says over the past decade, the percentage of U.S. teen girls reporting persistent sadness or hopelessness increased by nearly 60%, reaching historic highs before improving only slightly in the latest survey. And we have uncovered that the reason for that is low self-worth. And so for the purposes of Under His Wings, we have our own definition of self-worth. And this is our definition. Self-worth is the truth about who you are. It is not based on your accomplishments, mistakes, or the opinions of others. Self-worth is an honest understanding of your value, your purpose, and the confidence to make meaningful choices about your life. And that is what we are all about building and instilling in the next generation of young women. So on our Substack, Arcelia wrote this piece about stewarding your worth. And Arcelia, I wanted to ask you some questions about that. So can you kind of give us the overarching goal of that piece?
Right. So when we think about stewardship, we're thinking about being faithful with what has been given to us. And we talk about stewarding time. We can talk about stewarding talents and any sort of other resources. But when we say stewarding your self-worth, that is something that I really hadn't pondered it in that sort of context before. But we were created in the image of God. And to be able to fully stay in that wonder of what that means, to be created in His image, right? And to unpack what it looks like. To steward the self-worth is to be able to say, wow, I was created for a purpose. I was created for a reason, and not getting distracted by what society, whether it's the culture, the time periods, what we read, what we see, individuals in our lives, to dictate what that is. And if we steward our self-worth, if we know who we are and who we belong to, that helps us then to be faithful stewards of everything else. And so stewarding, I remember someone once told me that what is the difference between self-worth and self-esteem? Well, self-esteem is what I believe about myself, right? And usually some of that belief comes in experiences and maybe what people say, maybe what I do. That's true. That's what we're all up against. Self-worth is what is true about what God says, right? And Psalm 139 is a psalm that I would challenge all of us to even go for 30 days. Let's take the 30-day Psalm 139 challenge and read it every single day and think about what that means, how we're created in his image and how God is always there. Stewarding that gift, the gift of being created in its image, we're different in that we've got the imprint of God on us. Just as Jesus said, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar, and unto God that which is God. So for us to be faithful stewards of self-worth is to live a life that honors God. And that right there comes through knowing him.
Do you want to read Psalm 139 or the position that you're talking about?
Yes.
And while you're finding that, I'm going to read something. This is on our Substack. Self-worth is deeply connected to our identity.
Yes.
It influences how we see ourselves, how we relate to others, the boundaries we establish, and the choices that we make. And then you also say later on that our feelings about ourselves can change from day to day.
Yes.
And so that's why it's important to not ground yourself in self-esteem or how you feel about yourself, and ground yourself in something that you know is true.
Right.
And what better than to have the truth of God tell you who you are?
So Psalm 139, O God, O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You understand my thought from afar. You scrutinize my path and my lying down and are intimately acquainted with all my ways. Ultimately, the self-worth piece comes from being known. Like even the world will say that. There's an old song that is out in oldies that says, to know you is to love you, and I do, right? Mm-hmm. And so Jesus even said, if you love me, you'll obey my commands. And part of that is knowing how deeply that we are loved. We can't help but return that love to him. And that in itself, our self-worth is in all of that. Mm-hmm. But what we have in our society is so many different voices that are coming up against who we are. I would love to read the entire psalm, but I'm going to challenge you guys to read that.
I love the verse, he's intimately acquainted with all of our ways.
Yes.
Because I think one thing that can really attack, as you wrote, is when you are loved by God and known by him, it becomes better equipped to recognize and resist insecurity.
Yes.
And instead of allowing insecurity to manifest through envy, jealousy, or comparison, we can learn to walk in greater freedom and contentment.
Yes.
And that's so important because I think for young ladies, particularly as they're scrolling on social media, always comparison. We've talked about comparison before, how that's such a vile thing to let into our hearts, but to know that God is intimately acquainted with all of our ways, and that means even the things that we don't like about ourselves.
Yes.
And he still chooses to love you and define you through his love for you.
Exactly. Recognizing and resisting insecurity, the way that we do that is the security comes from that piece of knowing that we're loved. Think about when insecurity comes in our lives. It's usually when there's some sort of change or we don't really know what our role is on that. But if you know the one who is in charge of everything, right? And he is above everything. If you go back to that, your security is there. Mm-hmm. And really that's tied into our identity. Self-worth is tied into our identity in such a way that it's like you can't even take that apart. That is what the enemy is continually trying to do. He did that with Eve in the Garden of Eden. Did God really say? Satan was trying to get Eve to doubt God's goodness, right? And the role of what God said she could do or not do. And then later on, when Jesus was baptized and then came up from the water and the Father said, "This is my Son in whom I'm well pleased." What happened was God the Father was affirming him and saying, "You are my Son. This is my Son in whom I'm well pleased." But then right after that, when the Spirit took him into the wilderness, the very first thing the enemy asks him is,
"Are you really the Son of God?"
Basically, if you are the Son of God, change these stones into bread. He was trying to get him to doubt his identity, right? And so when you get to a place of doubting your identity, what did Jesus show us that he did? It is written. It is written. So really trying to take those thoughts captive, and how it alleviates the insecurity and the jealousy and the envy that comes is realizing, wait a minute, the truth is this: everything that God has made is beautiful. And if I see a young lady and she is beautiful, that doesn't mean that I'm not beautiful. And if she's good at this talent, that doesn't mean that I have to be good at that talent. And I'm actually speaking to the old me. I wrote something a long time ago. I called it Free to Enjoy the Butterflies. And basically what that was reminding me is something the Lord was teaching me, was the fact that everything he's made was beautiful. I don't have to compare who I am and what I do with what someone else was doing, because that would prevent so many opportunities for friendships and relationships because of my own insecurity, because of my own self-worth. And so you can tell a lot when someone feels secure with who they are based on them uplifting someone, right? And not in a bad way of saying, oh, you're just so good, I'm nothing. No. You're confident in who you are, and something we'll share is how beautiful a rose is, how beautiful a daisy is, how beautiful a gladiola is. All of those flowers are beautiful, but they don't look the same. The same thing I remember when the Lord was showing me about the beauty of how he's made each and every one of us. And hey, listen, I just turned 50, and I would love to tell you that goes away, the insecurity of comparing. It does not. There's other seasons that come up, like maybe someone's child is able to do this and your child does not do it. No, the enemy does not. I do not place my self-worth in being a parent, being a wife. It's got to be in the way that God has made me.
And in what he's called you to do.
Exactly.
With your time.
Exactly.
I always love the rose comparison that you do. There's a rose and a tulip are both beautiful, but they don't look the same because they have different purposes.
Yes.
And I always love that comparison that you have. We have talked about why self-worth is important and how you can discover your self-worth in the identity that God gives you, and that he calls you loved, he calls you chosen, he calls you beloved.
Yes.
And it's good for you to go back to what is written and remind yourself of that truth. But it's also good to have some practical tips on what self-worth is. And you may even be asking, okay, I have a good understanding of what self-worth is, but how do I determine what my self-worth is? And like, how am I on a scale? Like, how do I actually value myself? And I'll be the first to tell you that can fluctuate in seasons too. There might be a particular season when you're like, okay, I know who I am, I know what I'm doing, and I know what I'm good at, and I'm confident in that, and I know that I'm loved by the Lord. And then something happens and that worth just plummets, and you're kind of stuck in this season of like anxiety and hardship, and you're questioning who you are and why God has you in this season. And I think that is particularly crucial for young ladies in seasons of transition. And I mean, really, 13 through 23, you're in a constant season of transition. You're going from middle school to high school, from high school to college to workforce. And then there's all that relationship struggle that's in between. There's just so much of you thinking all the time about who you are and who you're going to become and your place in this world. That I think it's really important to ground yourself in knowing what self-worth is before you enter those seasons of transitions or see them coming. And so to help with that, we've actually created a self-worth reflection. Under His Wings has as a tool a self-worth reflection. It's on our website. It's in a link below. It's on our Substack. And what that is it's just for you to take. We don't collect your data. We don't collect your answers. We're not interested in doing that. It's just simply a free tool for you to answer some basic questions and just kind of gauge where you are right now in this season. I know for me, I was in a season a couple months ago before we did the self-worth reflection where I was really experiencing a lot of anxiety, and that's not something that I really dealt with before, but for some reason it just kept coming and coming. And I was talking to my roommate about this. I was like, I've never felt this before. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. And that was because my self-worth during those seasons was really low. And that was because we were in a season of transition here. And I was just like kind of rocking around wondering, what am I doing? What's going on? And that was really affecting my self-worth. But now we created the self-reflection. And as we were going through the questions and writing the questions and like tweaking it and making it better, I was able to assess and be like, if I had taken this reflection during that time, I would have been able to identify that sooner. And I wouldn't have had to essentially suffer for months on end with this anxiety. And I would have been able to nip that in the bud. And so this is something that I could see myself taking for the rest of my life, just in seasons of like, okay, like I may be sensing this anxiety, I may be sensing this depression, I may be sensing this season of transition, I may be kind of going down this spiral for a second. And it's really just a good grounding tool for you to assess where you are. And again, we don't collect your data. We're not interested in that. That's just simply for you and you alone and you and the Lord. And what you can do you have anything to say about this?
I was going to say that, Paul talks about examine yourselves to see if you're in the faith, right? And so this is not an examination like a test. It's just a reflection for you, setting aside that time where you can sit down and be real with God and yourself and journal about it. Like, I am struggling in this area. And that is where the true growth happens, because you're being honest about it. And what you were saying earlier is sometimes we do have seasons maybe where we do struggle with our self-worth, but this right here, this tool will help us to identify what it is. And then also the Lord will help prune, because then we start to realize, remember, he says, I'm the vine, you are the branches. If a man abides in me and I am him, he produces much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. And so sometimes if you think about it, like if you think of a vineyard, he was thinking of a vineyard and all of the grapes, we get the branches, get their nutrients from the vine. And so sometimes what happens is that vine will start to create its own roots. And if it creates its own roots, what ends up happening is these tiny little champagne grapes, right? Because they're not drawing from what the true essence of the vine, remember? So the vine dresser comes and he clips and he prunes out. So those times and seasons where we might feel that anxiety, remember, that it might come up. It's just indicating maybe we started to place our worth in something that we shouldn't have. So it's not necessarily, it's a good way of us examining where we're at. And those are for those, for all of us. And I'm saying that as a witness because I have that time of asking the Lord.
And it's just a good tool for you to have in your back pocket for any season.
I'm really excited about being able to share this with everyone.
Me too. And what I like about the reflection is that it's very, it doesn't just give you, okay, here's where you are in your walk. Here's like, maybe you need to help in this area. It gives you encouragement. We put scriptures in there. Yes. So like, no matter where you are in the reflection, you're able to have an immediate scripture that reminds you what your worth is.
Amen.
And that's what I like about it, because it's hope filled. It's not just, okay,
this is where you're at.
Where you're at. Go figure it out. So that's the first thing, a practical tip. Take the self-worth reflection, and then come back here. We have a couple other tips. One is find a mentor. Why is it important to have a mentor? We've done a whole podcast on this one.
Yes.
But why
there's so many reasons why it's good to have a mentor. It's nice to have someone who's further along on the timeline than you to be able to definitively give you feedback as far as what I can do, someone that you can trust, someone that can walk alongside you and encourage you and to share truth with you. Sometimes, we all need that. I have tons of mentors in my life, and we need that. So find a mentor. Yeah. And we've trained some mentors.
We've trained some mentors?
Yes. I'm very excited about that.
We got some good group of mentors. What I like, I hop in on the mentor trainings. And what I like about it is it's a group of older women who are so invested in this next generation, and they want to be a part of your life and support you and encourage you, because they do have so much to share. And one role that I have in it is I get to come along and I get to do like the slang test kind of that we've done in the past. Yes. And we will have these women in their 60s.
Yes.
with a notepad and a piece of paper and a pen, and they're writing down words like unk and chopped and with the definitions, because they really want to connect with you. They really want to understand this next generation of young women. I love that. I find that so endearing. But our third tip is to develop a routine and stick with it. And one of the reasons why this is important is because when things get unpredictable, or you kind of wake up and you're like, there's brain fog or whatever, that routine grounds you and it keeps you on the right track. It keeps you where you need to be going. Your body, creating a consistent habit, your body will just naturally want to flow into that. So even if you hit a bump in your life, you're like, oh, I wasn't expecting this, or this is unpredictable, or something happened, like my boyfriend broke up with me, somebody said something that was unsettling and it's really affecting my self-worth. My mom made a comment about my body, something like that. You're able to just kind of keep moving forward. That doesn't mean you toss it aside, but you're able to keep moving forward, because you don't ever just want to be stagnant and stay where you're at. You always want to be moving and growing.
Yes.
That's a key to resiliency. A fourth one is to find the right kind of community. So that'd be church. Why is that important?
It is so important. It says in Hebrews, do not forsake the assembling as some have the habit of doing, but consider, how to stir one another on to love and good deeds. And that stirring sometimes can feel like stinging, because we sometimes may be off the path in some areas, but that encouragement is so important. Community is so important. With one of our new programs with young adults, I'm talking to other organizations that have been doing this, and they talk about the piece of community, that they're really trying to develop that. We're made for community. And so being in a church community is important, because then you'll get truth. It won't be perfect. Listen, no church is perfect, okay? And do not let God's imperfect people keep you from being in his perfect word. But don't let that keep you. So community is so important.
Yes.
And I will say one other thing about that real quickly to the young adults is, I would say when you're moving to a different area, find a church. And then I'll even say find a chamber, find a chamber of commerce, because that is also helps you to identify the community and the area too.
Yes, that's very, I didn't think about a chamber.
Yes, because there's professional development classes that you can go through, and there's other young adults that are learning. And
yes. So. Or maybe you're listening and you're not a believer yet, and so the idea of going to church is uncomfortable for you.
Yep, that was me one time, so we see you.
Okay, our fifth one is spend your time wisely. It is a resource that you will never get back. And I think this is important, because as you discover your interests, gifts, and talents, there's several ways we could go about why it's important to spend your time wisely. So I'll take one and then you could take the other. But as you discover your interests, passions, gifts, and talents, it's really easy to look at other people and think, okay, well, they're either not developing their gifts, interests, passions, or talents, or they are, and they're farther along on the timeline than I am. So why should I even try? And that's sad, because one of the unique ways that God has gifted you with your talents and passions and gifts is a way to bring him glory. And so he wants you to bring those gifts and uncover them and to develop them on whatever path that may be. And so I would just encourage you, if you have people in your life that look at you and kind of like, why are you spending your time doing something that you're passionate about or that you want to see grow, or like you're building something, say it's a business, like why are you spending your time doing that? You're 21, you should be out partying or hanging out with other people and like just living your life. But this is something that the Lord has put on your heart to do and build. You do and build that, because that's going to bring God glory. And there should be no shame in trying to pursue that. And there also shouldn't be any shame in getting around people who are doing the same thing that you are doing, and then they're better at it than you, because you'll get there one day.
It's actually better to be around people that are better than you. I love our office. I love the people that I'm surrounding myself with. And I was reflecting on that the other day. Just the high level of caliber of people that we have is so great. And I love that, because I've heard it said before, you shouldn't be the smartest person in the room, right? You should really surround yourself with different people. So the more and more, I wish I would have grasped that earlier on in my life when I was younger, because it is so true. All they do is take you to the next level. And as far as what you were just saying there, it just reminds me of Ephesians 5:15. Therefore, be careful how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of your time because the days are evil. And so to your point as far as being faithful steward, God has said in Ephesians that you are his workmanship created in Christ Jesus for good works that God has prepared beforehand that you would walk in them. Each and every one of us has gifts and talents, and I call it God's glory seed in us, right? God's glory is that we would be conformed more into the image of Christ. He knows exactly what that looks like for each of us. So to be faithful stewards, to cultivate those gifts and talents, that is being wise with your time. Try really hard not to look left and right and compare, but just know that God has a plan for you, and that helps with the self-worth.
Yes. And then I guess another thing to talk about spending your time wisely is, as you said, the days are evil, but there is a temptation out there to spend them evilly.
Oh, yes. Yes. For any age. It doesn't matter what age you are.
Yes. So
that's all we'll say about that.
Okay.
That's all we'll say about that.
And then the next tip is define your values and live by them. So this is important because what you value in yourself and in others will influence the life that you choose to build.
Yes.
And there's no better time to start that than now. Again, the world will tell you, go have fun. Like, it's just your early 20s. Go have fun. Like, there's no big deal. But the truth is that every choice that you make today affects your life tomorrow, and that compounds and builds over time. And so the sooner you're able to figure out what you value and the communities that you pursue and the voices that you allow to speak into your life, the more you're able to see how you treat others and develop better habits and spend your time wisely. Because ultimately what we value will shape the direction of our lives.
And I love that. And later on, we will share with you one of the value sheets, and maybe even we can come up with something similar to what we did with this reflection, because I think that is so important. If you have an idea of what your compass is, that your non-negotiables, when you come up against something, you're going to know how you're going to choose, regardless if you're a Christian or not, whether you believe the same thing as we do or not. It is so important to have your convictions identified from the get-go. Also identifying what sort of thing do you want in a spouse later on, and for you to write down all those values so they're non-negotiable, so that when you have others come up to you, you know it's not a bad thing. It's you're able to say, well, this person doesn't fit what things that God has for me. So values in your convictions are so important to have. So I do think that we'll probably be able to share something with them for free, right?
Yes. We already have something
we do,
written.
But I want to take it to a next level.
we gotta workshop it some more. And the final one is exactly what we talked about earlier in this podcast, which is to know and love Jesus Christ and be loved by him. Because that's ultimately the definitive pattern of your worth. Mm-hmm. His love does not limit you. It frees you, and it gives you the strength to walk through challenges, the wisdom to make decisions, and confidence to live fully, so that you're able to attain your self-worth.
Well, with that, just reminding me of practicing self-compassion. So sometimes we do make mistakes. The practicing of self-compassion reminds me of Mark 12:30 and 31. Well, first of all, it says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, strength, and love your neighbor as yourself, as yourself. And so if you are struggling to love yourself, that I do believe is something that the enemy also tries to create static with. Whatever that is, reach out to someone that you trust and to talk about that, because you are lovely, whoever you are. And I don't even have to know the specifics of your background, but I will tell you that there is an enemy that tries to accuse the brethren day in, day out. So you are lovely, and practice self-compassion of loving yourself, and knowing that we love because he first loved us.
Yes. I'm so glad you added that part about self-compassion, because that's the last part of allowing yourself to be loved by Christ.
Yes.
Because sometimes you're harder on yourself than God is.
That's so true.
So one new thing that we're adding at the end of the podcast is we're actually taking questions now. And so we've opened up my email, Kimberly@underswingsgulfcoast.org. So if you have a question, maybe something you're struggling with, it doesn't matter what age you are.
I'm 50.
I'm 23. So if you're a parent and you're seeing your daughter struggle, or maybe your son struggle, or whatever it is, we open our inbox to you, and we'll read it on air and we'll answer it. I thought this would be really fun. If you wanted to write a letter to us instead, you can send it to our P.O. Box, which is P.O. Box 91, Montrose, Alabama. And that's also below in the description. Just because, why not? It's just fun.
I love getting mail.
I love it too. It's so fun. And we get to open it. It's like a little gift.
We're going to
like
write you back.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, we'll write you back. So we'll respond on air and we'll also write you back. I like that idea. But we do have our first question. This is from Hannah. She says, hey, I'm a senior in high school and I'm interested in working in ministry. I love what you're doing and have been watching Under His Wings for a while. I've been tossing the idea of Bible college around, and that seems like a big commitment. Should I just get involved in a local ministry or a church instead?
That's a really good question. It's really hard when we're trying to discover those things. Number one, I would say pray, right? It's obvious that God's doing a stirring in her heart if she's interested in ministry, which is true because if you are a Christian, he's already given us a ministry, the ministry reconciliation. What that looks like specifically for each one, we're not sure, and that's what she's trying to discover. So I would say, yes, go ahead and connect yourself with either a church, nonprofit that's already doing the work, and gather yourself with mentors and continue to take that step of researching Bible college. What does it cost? We like to do something called the Annie chart, right? Where we write down affirmatives, all the reasons why I should do something, all the reasons why I should not do something. And then the I we put as an I for inspiration. Write down any quotes or scriptures or anything that God confirms any of those columns. So again, that will also be able to help you count the cost as Jesus tells us to do before we make a decision, and really bathe it in prayer, because ultimately the Holy Spirit is the one who convicts us of sin, righteousness, and judgment, and he will guide you. It is good to have the voices of your mentors, your parents, and the counselors in there, but ultimately that conviction has to come, through the Holy Spirit. And when it gets hard, and it will, no matter what it is, you'll go back to that and know I've made this choice and I've made this decision. So we'll pray for you, Hannah, as you discover what God has for you. Just enjoy the journey. Don't stress out and think you have to have it figured out. Please don't. This is, again, me rewinding myself to talk to younger me is just please enjoy the journey.
When I look back at senior year to college, it was enjoy the journey more. Don't put so much stress on yourself. And also, a lot of people might be pressuring you right now to go to college or go to Bible college right now. But the truth is you can always gather your resources and go in a couple years if the Lord is still putting that on your heart. But I really like what Arcelia said, which is to get involved in local ministries and churches and see what they're doing first, and gather yourself with mentors, because those connections are ultimately gonna tell you the Lord will use those people in your life to guide. But yes, just de-stress yourself and enjoy the journey, because there's so much pressure when you're young. But I think that's all we have for this podcast. So thank you guys for listening in love with us this week. Thank you for listening in love with us. Join our mission as we provide and equip young women to build resilience through biblical principles at underhiswingsgulfcoast.org.